right, it's now 3:13. We're going to call to order the meeting of our electric committee. And new business item 1 is Chris Sims is here from Smart Utility Management. He's here to present retail rate maintenance options for us to go over. So, Chris, if you would.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
So what we're going to review today, we've been maintaining the electric rates for the city of Seaford for a little over a decade now. Probably back in 2008, we started by introducing a customer charge. It was $4 back at that time for a residential customer. And the reason for instituting a customer charge and to make sure it's of a sufficient level is to make sure that the city is maintaining its operating expenses, covering its operating expenses for running the electric utility itself. So when we exclude power supply costs, because power supply costs depend on how much energy is actually consumed by the town, the customer charge is designed to collect all those fixed costs that are unavoidable. You know, maintaining the system, salaries and benefits and things of that nature are what are included or typically included in the customer charge. And so since we started out at a small figure, it's really hard to implement a pretty significant charge right off of the bat. And so utilities over the last decade, outside of even Seaford, have been increasing their customer charges steadily to ensure the collection of those fixed costs. And so that's what we're going to look at today. So the first page of the handout has what the minimum bills are. And the reason that the minimum bill is included is because with Seaford, even though our customer charge for a residential customer is only $10, the minimum bill is still at $15. And we can see how that compares amongst the other utilities in the state. It's pretty much right in the middle, you know, some higher, some lower, but the $15 range for a residential customer, which is the majority of the customers in the city, is a pretty reasonable figure based on others, our other peers. That $15 is essentially based off of the first 45 kilowatt hours are essentially free for a residential customer. So if you use between 0 and 45 kilowatt hours, your bill is essentially $15 regardless. You can see the progression of the different rate classes. They're in the different columns C through F. So that's the commercial non-demands, it's at $15. The small general service demand is at $50. And then the much larger customers, MGS and LGS, it's actually, there's a minimum demand charge, since a customer charge, when you get it to a customer that size, it would be at a level where a figure that is not really realistic or way out of proportion relative to other customers. And so there's essentially minimum demand thresholds for those accounts. So the second page then is the customer charges itself. And as I mentioned, so for Seaford, for the residential customers, you see it's $10. And that's really, it's basically tied for the third lowest in the state. And you can see even DP&L and our other peers, Smyrna and Lewis and the like, have ones that are actually closer to where Seaford's minimum bill is today for the residential, is closer to that $15 mark. Even if we were to go to a high level, well, it may seem high at $20 for a customer charge for a residential. That's still not a significant figure relative to what the fixed costs are as a proportion of the customer's bill. So typically it's probably like a 40-60 split, so 40% of your costs are fixed and 60% would be for power supply costs. So it can support a fairly high customer charge. Not that we would put it that high, but if we were to do it straight relative to the total. If we were to collect all of our fixed costs via the customer charge, it would be roughly $100 per customer per month. And obviously, we're not going to suggest that level, but it's just more support for. We have plenty of room. I've seen other states have in the high 20s and low 30s is sort of where the acceptable maximums are. And so it's really not till we get to that $20 level where we might want to consider doing a sort of cost of service. We'd have to be more careful where we're collecting our fixed costs between which rate class, but we're not anywhere near that level today. There's I think we've got plenty of room to make incremental adjustments as we have. Last year we had an $8.75 customer charge that went up to $10. So we only increased it $1.25, nothing super significant. You can see how our other customer charges for our other classes compare as well. So the commercial non-demands is $12, the small general service demand is $50, and the MGS is $65, and the LGS is $200. And so for our demand customers, the SGS and above, those are at the higher end of the of this ratio. If it was sorted based on those rate classes, we would be some of the highest in the state. And so for this year, I'm not suggesting that we adjust the demand customers' customer charge. And there's really not as much a need for it, particularly as you get to the larger customers, because they have that minimum demand bill. And the minimum demand bill is, I believe it's $300 plus for an MGS customer, and it's over $1,000 for an LGS, which relative to their bill is a very small figure. So I think we should leave the demand customers where they are today, but then focus our attention on the residential and the commercial non-demands. The other main point to identify here is that the commercial non-demands typically have a higher customer charge and they have higher rates on a per kilowatt hour basis than a residential customer. And that's really for a couple reasons. One is the residential customer typically has a better, what we call a load factor, meaning they're at the house more often, use more consistent levels of energy on a weekly, monthly basis, where a commercial non-demand customer, they may have odd operating hours, maybe they're seasonal, they only operate in the spring or fall, and so they typically bear more costs on a per kilowatt hour basis and on a customer charge basis than our residentials. And so that's why you'll see as we get to it, when I propose rates for these two customer classes, typically we would want to keep the customer charge for the commercial non-demand to be slightly higher than the residential customer for that reason. And also the residential customers, traditionally they represent the most significant portion of the taxpayer and base customers for the utility, and so that's why you would typically give them a little more of a break than you would the commercials as well. Okay, any questions so far? No? Okay. So looking at the third page then, so I have the residential rates are at the top half and the commercial non-demands are at the bottom half. So if we focus on the residentials at the top half, their current rates are in column B there. So you can see the customer charge is $10. The first 45 kilowatt hour block is 0.160 per kilowatt hour. The next 705 is 0.1455, and so on. So for option one, if we were to do a very small incremental increase to the customer charge, similar to what we did in 2019, we would only raise it $1.50. So, we also want to make these increase in customer charges revenue neutral to the city's electric department as a whole. And so the amount of revenues that we're increasing the customer charge by, we're going to reduce the per kilowatt hour charges for these customers, so that, again, there's no overall rate increase to the customers. It's just within the classes, the ones that use less kilowatt hours will see a small increase in their bill, and the ones that utilize more kilowatt hours would see a small decrease in their bill, so that the net difference overall would be zero. And typically, a typical residential customer uses between 900 and 1,000 kilowatt hours a month. And so that's why we're focusing, or I've proposed here, that we focus all of the reduction in the per kilowatt hour rate in only that middle block. So not adjusting the first 45 and not adjusting the over 750. By adjusting just that middle block, then that ensures that all of the customers that use at least 750 kilowatt hours would essentially see the same net impact in their bill, which would be a small reduction. So our average size customers between 900 and 1,000 kilowatt hours are going to see a small reduction in their bill. The people that utilize between 0 and 45 or even 0 and 300 kilowatt hours, they are typically to catch the on-off readings. If you have someone that rents out their unit and they have someone that comes in mid-month, or even if it's a new customer mid-month, it would catch those customers. And what we've seen in other analysis in other towns is that it'll be for it could be for like small electrical loads, maybe if it's out in a farm building or a separate garage, or if there's some lights around the pool or things of that nature. It's for a single family home, or even one person in a home, to use less than 400 kilowatt hours a month is very difficult to do. You'd have to be there almost no time. So with that option one, so with a small increase to $1.50 in their customer charge to $11.50, and reducing that middle block to make it revenue neutral, we can see that would collect that 837 customers on line 9 there would see a average 49-cent increase in their bill. And there are roughly 4,000 unique bills that are billed out each month. That's not how many residential customers there are, but like I said, it catches those on-off readings. So you issue roughly, 4,000 bills on an annual basis for the residential customer class. So what that's showing is, it's roughly only 1/4 or 1/5 of the customers would see the small increase in their bill of 49 cents, and that represents a 0.7% increase in their bill. So nothing too significant at all. And then the next 3 lines show what the medium to high impact is. So 125 of those customers would see a $1.35 increase, which is roughly a 6% increase on their bill. And then the very highest, the people that use, exactly the 45 kilowatt hours, essentially, they would see the full $1.50 increase in their bill, and that's almost a 10% increase. But there's only 13 of those, and like I said, that doesn't represent the normal customer base. That truly is for the very small on-off reading or odd account. So that's what it represents here. So it's not showing the customers that get a decrease in their bill here. I do have the supporting pages for each one of these options if we wanted to look at what the maximum decrease in customers' bills are. This is just to identify those that will see an increase in their bill, what that magnitude is. So any questions on how this reads?
Yes. I look at my electric bill right now. I love it. It's like $180 some. But in December, it's going to be $500 some. January it's going to be $700. I'm there once a week.
Well, so for your bill, so someone that has a $100 bill plus, that is using roughly 1,000 kilowatt hours. So you would actually get a benefit in your bill. It would be small, But your bill would come down because we're increasing these very small customers' bills. I know it's not a significant amount, but you would get a couple dollars off of your bill.
I have a demand meter on, I'm a pastor in a church, and I have a demand meter on it.
Okay, I thought you were talking about your house, Dickie.
No, not my house.
So you have a small general service demand rate, class?
Yeah, not my house, Lord knows.
Mhm.
My church.
Yeah,
It's
so
small church.
there's no proposed changes for the small general service demand here, only the residentials and the commercial non-demands.
Okay.
Yeah, really the only way that we would be able to reduce the rates overall is we would have to see a pretty significant reduction in the wholesale costs that DMAC charges. See, they pull all of the wholesale power supply costs together for all of the DMAC members. And so it's not specific to each utility, so we can't really, it's an unavoidable cost, and we have to pay what the DMAC rate is. I mean, it has been coming down, and I believe the rates have been coming down steadily since probably 2013 or so. And that was at the time of the governor's MOU, which we did meet those threshold targets. I believe it's been at least 10% for each rate class since then. But they procure power supply costs out several years, and so it just takes a while to be able to see the benefits of the lower cost power supply. It just takes a while to trickle down through the utilities. Okay. So option 2 is if we were to increase the customer charge a little more, so bring it up to $13 for the residential, and again, removing those additional revenues from that middle block. So you can see that catches a significant more number of customers. Almost half would see a small 99-cent increase in their bill, 1.5%. And then you can see the medium impact's $2.65, roughly 12%. And the customers that, again, use exactly the minimum bill kilowatt hours would see the full $3 increase in their bill, which is almost a 20% increase. So, but again, that's a very small number of customers, and it's not representative of a typical household. And then the third option is if we were to increase it all the way to where the minimum bill is today, and that would essentially, that's been a goal of ours this whole time, to get the customer charge up so that we can eliminate the minimum bill in the billing system and have that minimum bill just be the customer charge going forward. That's pretty much industry standard essentially at this point. And so that's really becomes the question is, do we think that those percentage increases, even though it is the smaller accounts, you know, where do we see the increase in the customer charge that's easily acceptable or accepted by the customers, you know, get less pushback,
Chris,
essentially.
if I might, if the committee could turn to page 5, just for a graphical representation of what Chris has laid out very well. You see there what he's laid out is the residential rate class, and this is option 1. So this is increase of the customer charge to $1.50. And if you focus on the left-hand side of the graph, you see the red line, you see the blue line there, and then that kind of the bottom of the graph with the dotted line is the average rate class impact. So as he was talking about your average customer, think about that person, find that 900 to 1,000, 1,100 kilowatt hours and kind of look at that point, okay? So your average customer in the rates that are proposed here, their percentage is going to go down about, I'm extrapolating the graph here, Chris, but about 0.5%, okay? So everyone to the left of that are these ultra low users. So these people that are on off, these people that have maybe distributed generation, maybe like Chris says, think of a very small account. The classic example was someone in an apartment complex who has a move out, puts it in their name, and they want to paint the walls and get it ready for the rollover. So that person, you know, that customer would be on that left-hand side. The kind of the average use, the average customer is to the right of that. And so those people, the majority of our customers, would get a rate reduction. I know Chris really looks very hard at those people who are going to get the rate increase, and we want to do that. But understand, the majority of our customers really get that the impact of this is a reduction, a small amount, but, and as Chris stated, this is meant to be revenue neutral. So, you know, that's the whole idea behind this. What's in front of the committee today is not really to increase any rates or pass through a rate increase or a decrease or anything like that. It's really doing some rate maintenance so that we can more achieve some revenue balance between customers. Those customers that have ultra low or very low usages, we really need through our rate structure for them to kind of contribute a little bit more to the work that Bill does, underwriting, the poles and wires and transformers and things of that nature. Because right now, if you think about it, they're really not paying their fair share. They're not carrying their fixed cost. Does that make sense? And it's been a direction we've been going with increasing this, instituting the customer charge, and increasing the customer charge for, Chris, help me out, 10 years we've been doing that?
Yeah, it's been at least 2008, yeah.
And we've taken very slow incremental steps to do that to get our rates modernized is what I'll call it. So, you have people that might have solar, you have people who might come here, maybe only use their garage during the summertime or something of that nature. So does that help kind of put some more context around, and this is really an interesting rate maintenance period. This is probably the only one, and Bill might remember, that I remember where we're doing so little. We're talking about massaging some rates in 2 rate classes, only residential and small commercial. We're not dealing with a rate change per se. We're dealing with some customer, massaging of some rate classes. But DMEC has not yet told us what the new rate is going to be. We anticipate that to be in the February timeframe when we traditionally get their price signal for the wholesale rate. Is that about correct?
Yeah, they vote on it mid-December, and then would start billing it at the end of January.
So we'll be back again to look at that if there is a rate reduction. So, Smart Utility will be back with some more analysis of that. So it's really kind of a very narrow focus that we have here today. And, does the committee have any feel for staff and for Chris? Do we want to take one incremental step at 1150 and take another bite at the apple on our kind of our long march towards rate modernization? Or do we feel like, based on these customers, we might want to go a little bit more and go to $13? That's really the question. My own opinion, going to $15, when I look at page 2, it really starts to slide us down on the higher side of that. Well, I think it's a big step in one move. My own, and I really didn't come to this on my own. Bill and I talked about it, and we talked about it with Chris. I think Chris was leaning towards maybe option 1 or option 2, and that's why you've presented them. You gave us the other option, but
yeah, no, I really feel option 2 would be the most. Raising it $3 would probably be the most. That's even though, I mean $5 is roughly, that's 50% of what the current customer charge is. I know it's still going to give an overall benefit to those customers, but when they see the typical household, however, when they see it on their bill that customer charge essentially goes up 50% in 1 month, that would typically result in pretty significant additional phone calls to say what's going on.
I personally, I don't think that people will actually read their electric bill. I
Well,
think they look at how much
The total is?
And so I think they need to, if they would look at the cost, everything that's involved in their electric bill, then they can see it. But I think that you will have more phone calls if you go with, you will have more phone calls if you go from that one option to the extreme option. And what Charles explained it really good over here to, in this area, how do you get those that are not paying their fair share to pay their fair share and it not affect those few? if you got 5 people that are paying what they may say extreme, and then you got 25 people that are not, and they're comfortable with what they're paying. And how do you get them to come and start paying their fair share? And what do you do with those that are kind of maybe overpaying a little extreme? Because you got to give all of them some type of increase.
No, you're right. I mean, to be the most equitable, like I said, the customer charge should be north of $20. And we just, feasibly, that's too far, definitely too far to go in one fell swoop.
That's rate shock. We don't want to shock our customers.
Yeah.
And Chris, I apologize. I know you told us in the beginning, and I'll say I'm sorry again, but when was the last time we massaged this rate? I know you told us.
No, we did perform this in 2019. We went up $1.25.
Okay.
And like I said, I'm positive it started out at $4 back in 2008. And so it's been typically every 1 or 2 years increasing it by roughly $1 or so.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
going to ask.
But now that we've got it up close to the minimum bill, I think we can make the justification to go a little bit more this time. That's why I suggested that middle range, that $13 customer charge. I think is likely to be a sweet spot, a good compromise.
Do you know when you're gonna do this?
So this would go into effect basically right after if it's approved by council, which would be at the end of this month. So it should be in effect with the November usage. So it would be in effect in 2 months.
You can get that done.
October usage or November usage? Because I bill for October and November.
Is it the middle of the month or is it the first week of the month when you do bill?
First, maybe into the second week of November, first week.
Yeah, so it would be then for the following month then.
For November.
Yeah.
So November consumption at the December bill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that's probably going to be a good time to do it because people think they're going from hot to cold.
Well, you
And
bring up a good point. Traditionally, we try, if we can, to do rate massages or rate changes during shoulder months.
Right. December's
starting to get towards higher consumption, but it is a better time to make these changes where the bills are not as high and not as impactful. I think some of the front counter, customer service folks would say, there's no time is good. You'll always have people who are looking at their bill and really, studying every small change, but you bring up a good point.
Yeah, and before, Seaford even had seasonal rates before, which all the utilities have gone away from. And so the moves that we've made previously were much more significant, and they had very large impacts on customers regardless of what their size was. So that's why it's the timing will have less of an impact that it's going into effect as the usage will increase as we go into the colder months.
And I think one thing leaning towards Chris's recommendation for the committee to maybe look at option number 2, if you go to page 10, it's that same graphical representation with that change. So if you increase the customer charge by that additional $1 or so to $13, then before, when we increased it to $1.50, remember the average customer that was past that point got about a 0.5% decrease. If you go with this option, the average customer, the majority of our customers, get about a 1% decrease.
Mm-hmm.
So, those people who are consuming electricity regularly, using a larger amount of electricity, are going to get a bigger break. Those people who are using power intermittently, choppy, only lean on us when they need to, we still have to give them the same service. That same bucket truck still has to roll, all that kind of stuff. They're going to pay a little bit more, and then your average customer is going to get a little bigger decrease. Did I state that correctly?
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So I think based on Mr. Sims' recommendation, he would focus you towards option 1 or option 2. And, yes, there are some increases with the smaller use customers out there. And he's actually gone through and created a spreadsheet for you there that really sums them up very well. And, you know, they will get increases that'll range, depending upon which item you take, in the 3 to 4% or a little greater. But then your other customers will get a slight decrease in their consumption.
And I have customer names whited out, but if I were to populate those customer names, you would see a lot of apartment buildings. It really does, the ones that use 0 to 45 kilowatt hours have to be basically vacant. Even if you had a light bulb running all month, it would use 45 kilowatt hours essentially.
Right.
So yeah, that we're talking empty places.
They-
Do we do what now? Well, we don't actually physically remove meters now. We actually can turn them off inside. We will take them off if there's a problem or a complaint, so we can take them off. But traditionally now, with the way we have our automated meter infrastructure, we can just hit a button and cut them off if we have to.
Aren't the meters still operational at that time? You may cut the power off. but-
Yeah, it's still on. We still have communications with the meter. It's just in an off state. If it starts to consume, it sends us a message that says something's going on here.
It's not
There's a,
consuming at all, though. I thought it used to consume when we kept them on. That's why we took them off.
no,
No.
Oh, sorry, I apologize. Yeah, you used to have to pull them and turn them quarter turn, what you remember.
Yeah.
So, or if you didn't, it would still consume. They weren't
That's what I'm
off.
saying, right, yeah. But now you don't have to. You don't have to do that now. Just hit the button. Push the button.
We're gonna hit him in the back of the head.
I'm sorry.
So does any committee member have a feel for, if we try to focus on option 1 or option 2? Because what we need today, the product of the meeting, is we would like to have a recommendation from the committee to take to council, as Mr. Sims said, on the 27th, so we can implement this change, in the December billing. So does any committee member have a feeling on which way they would like to go, maybe option 1 or option 2, and any feedback or discuss that?
I'll say this, I think the way you roll this out is going to have to be very tactful. It was explained very well to us, but to a just general resident, they may not have access to this conversation, this kind of communication. And to remember, we are in a COVID atmosphere, and a lot of our residents have been affected negatively from the economy. So to hear a term rate increase, it may rub some people the wrong way. So I guess terminology and the way it's explained to residents is going to be crucial, in my opinion.
That's a good point. I think, some customers certainly are going to receive this as a rate increase. This is a revenue neutral change. So, yeah, but those details, you're correct. If they don't have kind of access to what's going on and what we're doing, that's a good point. So with that statement, are you leaning towards maybe option 1 under the circumstances, just to take a smaller step and to try to not be as...
In my opinion, a marginal step forward is the way to go, step 1. But again, I'd like to hear the opinions of the committee members.
The reason why I asked the question about when the rate increase would take place was because of what Matt said. That right now we're on this COVID, people are, anytime I'm in a meeting, now you could go to option 3, it wouldn't bother me. I'm good. But I think about the people in the community and the people that I deal with on an everyday basis that are out there that I see struggling. I'm saying, you may say, well, $3, $5 may not hurt you or anybody in this room. But what about those people that are out there? So I'm saying I think it would be wise if we would consider, you got to do something. If you got to do something, I understand we were here this morning and we understand the undertaking about the new project with the new, all of the stuff you got to buy. because you gotta look at the future. You cannot stand still. So you have to do something. So a little bit of the pie is better than no part of the pie. So I think most people don't read the bills. So you got a population out there that are not looking at the bill, they're looking at how much when I picked up my electric bill this morning for my church and for my house, I didn't look at it because I already understand how to read it, but I looked at how much is it up or is it down? And so I think that because we have to do something in order to keep going with what we're trying to, with the infrastructure of the city, what we're trying to do to grow Seaford, we have to do something. You're going to always get some flack. So I think we need an increase, but if we go with we go with the smallest increment that we can. And when all this COVID and all this is over, then we go again. If that makes sense.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense. Again, I don't know how many residents go through their bill with a fine-tooth comb. If you ask them, what's your usage? How much electric are you using? How many people actually know that number? And in order to calculate how this is going to benefit them or have additional costs. So, again, I think the way we explain it, and also it's an opportunity to educate on some level this process, where they might say, well, I don't want to pay more on my bill, but as Chris was saying, this might actually result in them having savings on their bill. That to me is the crucial step, because otherwise I think you'll get a lot of backlash from people.
Yeah, I mean, if I read it correctly, anybody who consumes on a monthly basis above 650 kilowatt hours will get a rate decrease.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is the vast majority of our customers.
Like I said, to use 500 kilowatt hours or less, that is a very empty unit. I mean, if you run like the washing machine once in that month, you probably used 400 kilowatt hours.
Yeah, and
with the hot water heater running all month. I mean, that's a really small level of usage.
And if you think about those customers that this is focused on, the customers that, the apartment complexes and things like that, during move-outs and everything, maybe they'll have one of these small bills 2 months in the year, and then the rest of the time it's occupied. So, it's not like that person in that scenario gets this increase every month of the year, but they are subject to it.
But the apartment complexes, because we have so many of them, are the ones that's really
But it would almost have to be an empty unit.
Right.
It's not an occupied.
Yeah.
An occupied unit gets a decrease.
Most of the ones that are going to be affected is if I'm renting a house from you and I move out October 20th. So I pay my electric bill. Well, then you have from October 20th to November 1st, you have 10 days where you don't need the heat right now because it's not going to go below freezing. So the house sits there with the refrigerator running and the hot water heater running maybe for 10 days. That bill would be a couple dollars, maybe higher. Well, if you get with option one, the highest it's going to be is $1.50 higher than if that had happened before we vote, before you adopt one of these changes. It's not going to affect many residents that are living in a house because they're normally using more than 500 kilowatts a month. It's going to be the transient people, or maybe I move in. Maybe you're nice enough to let me move in October 20th instead of November the 1st. So I have a week electric, 1 week electric bill.
That could happen.
Things like that. That's the people it's going to affect the most.
Is there any value in potentially developing just like a generic fact sheet for people to review something? Again, this data can be overwhelming to some people.
Yeah.
And just to put it in general terms, it might be beneficial for people. This is what the new rates are going to be, and then to see it, if mine are over 650, well, I'm going to save money, stuff like that, like factoids or things of that nature.
Yeah, I think that we can do a couple things. You know, I don't want to overdo this, but we
Yeah.
obviously, to make the change, we have to update our fee and rate schedule, which we'll publish. Okay, that again is very complicated, very lengthy though. But I think potentially we could maybe lean on some of our staff and maybe some of our elected officials to maybe publish a video related to this. We have some time, and we could certainly work with our customer service representatives so they understand, you know, this is a class of customers, and maybe be able to try to coach them through any changes or any concerns that they have.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Gigi, you're off quiet over there.
I'm just taking it in.
Taking it all in.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Pastor
Another
Ross.
thing is, I think communication is key.
Yeah.
Without information, I think that people just are in the dark. You you get out information, and you got to figure out how to get it out there. Now everybody's live streaming and doing all that stuff, but everybody's not able to do that. But I think information is important, but you got to get people to understand, because I think that most people that don't understand usage, kilowatts, most people can't go outside and read the meter. They don't read the meter, see, you know, what they see the electric bill, they don't go outside and read it and see, well, you know, what was it last month and what was this month? I think most people are trying to cut electric off. And so what you're saying is if you use more to a certain degree, you'll get a decrease. But if you use less, and a lot of people are trying to use less now, and they're cutting this off and cutting that off, and so now they're going to be affected by that increase. And they're going to get the increase because of the fact that they think, well, I'm saving money now because I'm cutting the TV off.
I feel to a certain degree, Pastor Ross, but I think given the minimum amount that we're talking about, they'd have to cut back to the bare bones. Like, you're not turning the lights on in your household.
Yeah, sitting in the dark.
Yeah.
Not,
I mean, if you go back to, and I made a note of what Mr. Sims said, average consumption's between 900 and 1,000. And you're right. People are trying to cut back and conserve, okay? But you would have to go back all the way to about 650 before you would start to see an increase. So if you talk about reducing your electric consumption by a third, not that you couldn't do it, but that's really changing your lifestyle if that's really what you are used to consuming. But you are correct. There could be those that really work hard to save and conserve energy, and they do get a slight increase. It could happen.
I mean, and that increase would only be per kilowatt hour. The number they see on their bill is going to be way down. If they are able to reduce their consumption by a third, their bill will go from $140 down to $100. So it's only the per kilowatt hour charge, because you're using fewer kilowatt hours, it would be a little higher, but that would be, it would be a significant decrease in their bill.
Now, is this usage on kilowatt hours, or
Kilowatt hours.
The increase it's on kilowatt hours?
Well, no, sorry, the increase is because of the customer charge increasing, because we are reducing the per kilowatt hour rate in the middle, so that if
That's a good point.
Yeah.
If you kind of study those numbers on page 3 in that first block there, column C, lines 2 and 4 in the pink and the blue there, okay? So we're going to increase the customer charge, that fixed charge, from 10 to 11.50. But see, that second rate block goes down to 14.2 cents per kilowatt hour from 14.5. So they're actually getting a reduction in their kilowatt hour charge. That's what makes it revenue neutral. They get a little higher fixed charge in their customer charge, and then they get a commensurate reduction in their per kilowatt hour.
I follow you now, because I think I remember it. You start off, everybody starts off with a certain amount of.
Yeah, 45 kilowatt hours,
Yeah,
essentially.
kilowatt hours.
Right.
Everybody gonna start with that.
Yes, sir.
Then from that, then you add, that's when you start actually getting your charge, right?
Yes.
After that 500 or whatever. 600.
It's just 45.
40.
In
per
this rate
45,
class.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm done.
You okay?
I'm good. I'll go back and restate, we need the money to go forth. We need the money to make the city grow, so, I said we shoot for in the middle.
option 2.
Yeah,
Your
option
option
two.
I agree.
I agree
think
with
Option
option
two.
two.
Okay.
We never get where we need to get. Somebody's gonna holler anyway. So we never get where we need to get without, sometimes you gotta squeeze the bottle, in order to, So I agree with option two. You don't go all the way to the extreme, but you don't extreme either way. So I think we need to go with option two.
Bill?
And I think that, I think it's a
I
good
can,
thing.
I can support that.
Okay. Two it is.
I agree. That's what I've been thinking the whole time.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I make a motion for option 2, to move forward with option 2.
Recommend that to city council?
Yes.
I'll second the motion.
Doing a roll call, or how we do this? No?
Voice
Okay.
vote, probably.
All right, do I have any objections? Okay. So we're gonna move forward to option number 2, recommending that to city council. That'll be on won't be our next meeting,
27.
27th.
Yes,
okay?
sir, of this
Will
month.
be our next meeting.
Yes.
So, that'll be on the agenda, which will be adjusted here momentarily. I guess with that, we'll adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that one too.
All right, there we
I'm
go.
gonna second that too.